So let's start with our first question. So
some...
in the room, what size organizations do you work for?
This is a good question, guys.
So
There's no I don't know.
What's your size?
That's a good question. So I would be I don't know. I have somebody. 1,000-ish? There we go, enterprise. See? Yeah,
Genesys is pretty big, I would say.
I feel like it, but then I'm like, I don't know. I haven't met everyone in the company yet.
Are you remote or you're in the main office?
So I am remote. I can tell you right now, the amount of people that work in Ohio and Genesys, I think it's 2.
Okay.
And one of them is me. So I'm really good at knowing the amount of people that are locally in my area, but not great at everything else.
More than half of the room is enterprise, so 1,000+ employees.
And we got a few that's in small, which is nice. So you got a nice mixture.
Yeah, I just went from 5,000 to 300, so I'm in that medium section.
No one's less than 10? They just don't even think
There's
about
some solo
UX.
designers. I'm assuming you're agency of one freelance? Yeah? Who are the freelancers in the room?
Nice. We got one.
Get some online, I assume. Fantastic. That's great.
Okay.
How many are that below 50? How many of you are the only designer for the company? Okay,
Nothing?
How
How many are you the only researcher for your company? There you are, you poor soul. We chatted earlier. I was like, God bless you. Here's an article about how you need to get more in there.
Researcher, research operations manager, the research manager, you're everyone, all in one.
Yeah, if you're a researcher, you don't want to be doing ops stuff.
No.
It takes a lot of time. The good news is it's enterprise. Do you want me to chat a little bit and then we'll talk to
let's talk about your organization. Yours is quite big, right?
So I have worked for 2 different companies that were enterprise, and in UX research, I worked for McGraw-Hill, and they are a publisher. And then I also worked for, I've forgotten the name of my company, Genesys, Customer Service AI. So, I guess I could have looked down. Yeah, I could have. Anyways, when I was at UX Research, we actually we had a research team, but then it ended up everybody was no longer with the company. It just extinct. And so then they started building it back up from the ground. And they asked me, because it was during a restructure, they said, you've been doing design operations unintentionally for the past 5 years. Do you want to go on the design ops team, or do you want to spin up the UX research team with them? They said, we need a UX research ops position, but we don't know what they do. And I was like, cool, I'll figure it out. This is awesome.
That's different.
I was like, they sleep a lot. I think they eat snacks, lots of snacks, supplies of snacks. And they agreed that was not my job. And thankfully, Kate Talsey had wrote an article, so I read that, and it kind of helped me direct, and it was looking at a lot of other operational things and figuring out how to do it. Okay. We now have a research team of, how many do we have? 25? What? When did we hire people?
25 researchers.
I thought we were at 19. There we go. So plus management, 25, maybe. I was thinking 19. Okay. But there's 3 managers, a director, researchers, and it's been really nice because we have a lot of products, a lot of specialties, and so being able to have a bit of a mixed bag of stuff works.
Tell us a little bit about what Genesys does, so we know the kind of research you're working on.
Who does?
What does Genesys focus on?
Genesys.
Genesys
is like the EU version, right? Yeah.
And they have it in Spain, so I don't know what version I'm saying. But...
What do they do?
Yeah, what do you focus on?
The researchers or me?
The company.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, when you're this isn't working right, I'm going to talk to a customer service place. You can call them, you can click that little chat with us. If you don't ever want to talk to somebody, this is me. I love the Free Now app. And then I just talk to the cab driver the entire time. But yeah, so basically what it is, I forgot the question. Son of a gun. Hold on.
What does Genesys do?
What does Genesys do? There we go.
I always say this wrong.
So when you're looking at the chat with us, it's essentially, that's us. When you click on that and that bot shows up and they're like, hi, I'm totally a human. They don't actually say that. It's very what can I help you with? And it gives you selections and it does a nice job there. That's one of the things. They also help with the customer contact centers. So those different back-end areas that are actually handling all the customer service, the calls that come in, the people that are using those systems.
Fantastic.
We have anybody inside the customer service is really our designated demographic.
Does this include the knowledge base and FAQs, or is it mostly the contact?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I'm so glad I have a coworker here because it turns out when you have bright lights in your face, you forget a lot of stuff. I should have brought sunglasses. It would have been really cool.
We were talking about doing this, but I kind of like the sun.
I
It
know.
makes the shoes shine better, you know?
I wish I were getting a tan right now.
So, what is it like doing research on a product that is kind of already a contact point, right? So, how do you interrupt them in the middle of trying to get feedback? Like, how do you actually conduct your research?
How much do you want to die? Because you should never
Let's-
interrupt somebody while they're doing a customer service thing. That was one of the most difficult things about when I joined Genesys is before, when I was McGraw-Hill, it was often teachers or students. Students are a little harder to get. Teachers, you can pretty much find a teacher. You could like go outside and be like, anybody a teacher? And they'll tell you they're a teacher, and then they'll tell you your other friends are teachers, and it was very easy to get people. But with customer service agents, that was one of our big groups because they're the ones using a lot of it. And there was always deciders that want to talk to you as far as the people that say, yes, I can make a decision on whether we should take this or not. But to get the actual people who are logging in every day and dealing with so much stuff and they have outside things, sounds, noise, pressure, stress, you talk to them, but you can't talk to them. So you have to talk to their managers. And you have to talk to the CSMs who have an in with their managers. And then you have to say, can we talk to your people? And they're like, for how long? Well, are you
They're
going to want to talk
working,
to them
right?
again?
Yeah.
How much time do you need? Are they going to, what's going to happen? Because we have them on a queue, and their time is measured, and there's metrics, and it's not as easy as you would think. So it's really about providing that value. So telling the CSMs, like, hey, yes, you'll let us talk to your customers, your precious customers that you have raised up from a baby, and now they're like a full-grown adult, and you're very proud. I will not scare them off. Here is the value I'm going to provide to you. I can give you back what I've learned about your customer. And then they're like, okay. And it goes well with one person because the other CSMs have said, no chance. You're not talking to
So
my
you
people.
find a guinea pig, and then you're
And then you
like,
get one
trust.
good person, one good use case, and you're like, all right, so this worked out well. Let's talk to the other ones. And they can like vouch for you. So it's about getting an inside man to start the whole thing.
Okay. So, given that was the environment, what was it like to get the research operations teams, built up and get more people when people were so hesitant to do research to begin with?
Yeah, it is. It is very difficult, and it's never going to be something that you have 100 people on, like 100% people on board. Like it's a great idea. It works in theory, but then when you actually try to do it, you're going to have that 1%. You're just going to have that 1% that's like, I was going on and then I didn't. And then you're going to have another like 25% that are like, yes, let's do this. I'm here for it. And I don't know the rest of the percent because I'm terrible at math. But whatever that percent is like, we'll see how this goes. And then I'll tell you what I'm not doing and what I don't like. And those people are cool too because then you know what you need to fix. So it does take a while to get that adoption going. It takes a while to get something new out there to even see if it works, to get people to even do it so then they can tell you what's wrong with it. They might tell you what's right with it too, but there's not as many of them. They really love to tell you what's wrong. And that's good. You need that.
Yeah, certainly. So the ones of you who are here who are working in research, I'm assuming you also have to do your own operations since you don't have your dedicated research operations team. How many of you feel like you spend more than half of your time doing operations and not actual research? 5, 6,
Brave
7, 8.
souls.
A lot of hands going up, right?
You should talk to them. Kevin, why are you just sitting there? You want to go talk to some people?
Most people after this question. So, I want to know, how would you classify your company's culture? Is it pathological and power-oriented? Is it bureaucratic and rule-oriented? Or is it generative and performance-oriented?
Can you say these in real words? Oh, wait, people understand you. Never mind.
We have parentheses.
People like to have a lot of power. Do they love having power and not giving it away? Do they write rules? Do this, not that. All right, okay, performance. Oh, wait, here we
We
go.
want results.
We got a heart. Oh. We got a
Strong
sad.
performance.
I'm hoping that's empathy and not that you're sad you're here. I really hope so. We'll see. All right. You calling it? It's 47%.
Yeah, we're almost there.
You've got the stats?
So a lot of you are judged heavily on what you get done, right? They don't care how you get it done. They want 1,000 tests done this week. They don't care if it takes 9 hours to get one person to schedule. Okay, so what is the research operations team like for you? What is your team like? What is the process you kind of follow to make sure that they're both performing but have a bit of flexibility, a less bureaucratic environment?
So So that's a good question. We have somebody here on my team, Lily, and she just took a bite. I'm terrible. I am so rude. I was
Lily's
going to
having
see
a
if you could
pizza.
actually talk to somebody because, like, I can tell you I'm amazing at what I do and how I work with the team, but I would love for you to tell them
Lily,
once
do you
you're
mind?
done chewing and I don't call you out on stage like a rude, rude person. Lily's great, by the way. Lily works with me at Genesys. She's a researcher. Kevin could even go to her so she doesn't have to come up here.
I'm gonna get a mic
Yeah,
just for that
yeah.
purpose.
You're gonna get a mic.
Magic
Okay.
mic.
I was gonna say, you don't want to come up here, do you? The lights are shining in your eyes. It's terrible to remember stuff.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh yeah,
A little louder for us.
So you want me to describe Kasey's process?
this should be fun.
Oh, that's a first one that we can get in there. Yeah, what is it like working with Kasey to get your...
No, I was going to say, so
Chaotic.
I used to work in a company where I did all my own research ops. I was the only researcher. I had to recruit everyone. I had to manage budgets and track down cost centers. And it would delay research by weeks. And of course, some manager the other side doesn't really understand that. Oh, just because I didn't email you that, why is everything not done? I'm like, well, because I gotta pay someone to come talk to me, so you've got to speed that stuff up. And then that causes crazy knock-on delays that no one really anticipated. So moving to Genesys, I moved to a big research team for the first time, and we had research ops. And I mean, it's crazy how much it speeds stuff up. There's always things that are going to introduce delays that you can't account for, but it's nice to have someone who can manage data privacy, and I don't have to feel that weight so much. I just have to, if I do what Kasey says, I know I'm compliant, and it's fine. And I don't
Even
have
if
to
she
worry
does
about
80%, that's still a good solid win.
Yeah, or recently, for example, we needed new tools, and we just kind of put out an ask, and we had an operations team to be like, okay, well, I think we could probably push this tool that dovetail through procurement, and they tracked it down. They
Do a
deal with
business
legal,
case.
exactly,
Yep.
and then suddenly I just log in one day and I can have this tool that has sped my work up tenfold overnight. So it's great. It really Kasey describes her job as just what's the problem? Tell me and I'll fix it, and it's pretty much how it works. So it's pretty good.
And it's great to get the feedback from the team too, because you can't just say here you go, here's the process, do it now. You have to say hey, what do you think about this process? And then they're awesome because, especially Lily, there's others on my team too who have all these different perspectives, and they know what's going on as a researcher. They know how much pressure there is, and so they can tell you oh, that's never going to happen. I know that you'd love for us to do that. That's not going to work. And so it's all right, what's the bare minimum you'll do, and what's the bare minimum I need you to do, and then let's find the middle ground, because you can't create things in a silo either, and that's something you'll find out as well. There's been a lot of talk about democratization and getting research out. I think there was even a debate, yes?
Yes, there
I
was.
think I had my own debate too. It was really fun. It was very fun.
How many of you have had reductions to your research team in the last year?
None.
Oh, very happy to see that. Okay. So we've seen in the last layoffs in February that there was a bigger focus on research teams than on the design teams, but generally product design in general was cut when they did this big tech wave layoffs. So democratizing research has become a super big theme because they want PMs to do research, they want sometimes tech leads to do research, they want research to get the same amount done, if not more than last year, with sometimes less people or less budgets, especially a lot less time. And so one of the big things that is a bit of a challenge when you're trying to get a research operations team off the ground is, do we hire a researcher or do we hire a research ops person?
Hold on. We're changing sides. I just realized my earring's in the other ear. We're missing out. You guys are just seeing a random piece. I want you to see the earring. All right. Thank you. Sorry. All right. Whatever you were going to say, continue on. But we just made a mistake here. There was supposed to be... I need somebody to do staging next year? No, I'm kidding. All right. What was the question? I feel better. Earrings
These are
looking good,
forums.
yes?
I love forums. They're so casual.
Yes? No? Okay.
We're all good?
I'm
All
gonna
right.
say, we got to do some nods or thumbs up. Or I guess I could look there and you guys could just give me a sad face and I'd be like, oh no.
No. So one of the things that we're seeing is democratizing research is becoming a big theme, sometimes driven by the need to get more done with the same team or more done with a smaller team or less resources. So how do you get headcount approved to grow your research operations team?
That's a great question. I'm going to tell you, I wrote an article, and this is not a plug, by the way. I wrote an article with 2 other people, and the whole reason I wrote that was because at my old job, there was 1 of me when there had been 1.75 of me, and it was awesome. Like, I loved having somebody who could work 30 hours a week in research operations and take some of that burden off. We'd alternate active recruitment, we'd alternate processes, and then when I had that person leave, they were like, oh yeah, we'll replace them sometime.
Eventually.
And then I would ask again a couple of months, and they'd be like, sure, we're looking into it. And I was like, this is not sounding so promising. And so I looked at how much I was doing. I looked at how much they wanted me to do. And I said, here's where I'm at right now. Here's where you want me to be. Here's what I can handle. And it's like, and that's not handling it well. That is running around which I know you've seen me run around like an insane person, but like at work, running around like an insane person is chaos. It's terrible. And so I waited and waited, and I didn't get another hire. And so unfortunately, though I loved the team and they were awesome, I had to say, no, this isn't good for my health. And so then I went to Genesys, and in my first interview, I was like, if you hire me, I'm going to ask for a head count in a year. I'm just giving you a heads up. I said, I'm going to expect a head count in year 2. Just throwing it out there. And I explained why. I said, here's the logic behind it. And that's really the key point. You don't just go and say, like, give me this. Because you know if you have a kid or if you have a spouse or a partner or whoever that says, give me this, you're like, no chance. Nice. I love that you asked, but no. It's about saying, here's what's in it for you, and here's what you'll be able to do if you give me 1 more person. Sure, it costs this amount, but guess what? Guess how much effort you save? Guess how much happier people will be? You heard, Lily's a lot happier. She doesn't have to deal with tool procurement. I'd be a lot happier if I didn't have to deal with tool procurement. But sometimes that's part of the job. Sometimes that's what we have to do. Yeah. And so figure out how you can say what you can do with that extra headcount. What are you going to do with them once you get it? How is that going to How is that going to save you time? How is that going to put your valuable skills as a researcher or as a designer to do that thing? Because that's where the key element is. It takes me 2 hours to do this screener and then to talk to people and then to schedule them and XYZ. Or, oh, it takes this amount of time. If you had 1 research ops person or if you had 1 extra researcher, they could do this and this and this. And they'll be like, okay, I'll take that back, because they're going to go to their boss who doesn't even realize that's a thing, and then they're going to say, well, why do I want to do this? And you've already given them the whole thing. They can just hand it to them in a nice bow and go, here's why I want this head count. And that doesn't always happen. You have to do some of the work in order to get that.
Totally. Does anybody have any questions for Kasey?
Does anybody want to say anything?
Hello.
Hey, Kasey.
Hi.
Quick one. So, in a situation like that where people are asking so much of you and you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
It's always hard to stand your ground.
Oh, yeah.
In a way, versus people who often don't either understand what you're doing or care to understand. And have you found a way that the only resolution I found in my career is just moving company when shit gets bad? You just like fuck off and go. When you
It's
don't
a lot
want
of packing.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
Have you found success in standing your ground, or does it always end up eventually leaving?
That's a great question. I've done it once before, and then I've actually stayed at the company that I'm at now. I have a boss that's pretty empathetic. There are times where, like actually very recently, I had made a roadmap, and I was like, this is my roadmap. It's going to go great. It's going to go just as planned. And then we had a tool that wasn't working, and they were like, this is not going great. And the tool was being higher priced. And they were like, guess what? We need you to procure 2 more tools to replace this. It'll be a better process overall, but yeah, just take the next 3 months and just throw yourself in there. Oh, don't let anything else slip. And I was like, that's cool. As research operations, there is so much stuff you do in the background that people don't even notice because it's going swimmingly. They'll notice everything that's going wrong. And I said, you know that if I do this, I'll be able to keep up this, this, and this. But all of this that I put on the roadmap is going to another quarter, because guess what? I'm not going to be available to take that headspace and do all of this extra stuff for 3 months. And so once you say that and once you kind of give that context, then they're going to say yes or no. And then when they come back to you and they're like, hey, remember this? This was on the roadmap and it didn't get done. And what's going on with that? Why aren't you going to do that? I'm like, hey, let me just look in my OneNote. And oh, yeah. So we had a conversation about this in the quarterly discussion. And I said, oh, you want me to procure 2 tools that weren't on my roadmap? I'm going to push these to there. And then they go, oh, yeah, I did say that. And you say, so what's the priority now? You want me to just drop this procurement right in the middle? And they realize that you're a bit of a pain, but you're also right. And so then they say, I did remember that. And then they decide what they want you to do. Because often, once you're in the middle of something, it's not as easy to drop it. You've already got the contacts, you've already got people replying to you, which sometimes is the hardest thing in the world. If you've ever tried to work with like legal, data privacy, like sometimes they're awesome and they get right back to you. Sometimes they've got 50 fires that's going on and you're just like, hey, over here, I don't have a fire, I have a candle, but I'd love to talk to you. And they're just like, not a time for candlelit dinner, like we gotta go. And so it's really about making sure that you are clear at the beginning of, okay, this is starting to look like too much for me. I can only handle this much, and explaining to them why you can't handle more. And if that's not okay with them, I don't think that they are looking realistically at your job. You also have to explain what all you're doing, because
Correct.
There's a lot of stuff that I run in the background, and I don't log. I don't want to log every time that I do a report or every time somebody messages me and says like, hey, I've got this problem, can you solve it real quick? Because that takes time and that takes looking up the answer and then trying that answer and then going, that didn't work, and looking up another answer and then maybe 2 more. And like, I've got 3 other colleagues that are sitting here and they can say, I've messaged her a couple times, she's never responded back until like 3 or 4 days later. And then she's like, sorry, I'm so late. And it's because it's all these little tiny things that no one sees. And so it's budgeting in that too and saying, I got 20% of my time to solve random things that'll pop up and I can't do. And just being clear with your boss when you can't do something. Like, I've done the whole take on more than you can handle and working late into the night and then stressing myself out. And it creeps into everything else in your life, and it's not healthy for you. And you're going to do less of a good job because you're constantly stressed.
Agreed. You have to do
So,
some
being clear.
expectations management.
Yep. Reel me in, man. Let's go do something else if you want. Devs.
I have one more question for the group. So what are the pros and cons of a pathological culture? So just for a reminder, pathological is power-oriented. So there are differences you have to apply when trying to get things done based on the company culture. So, what are some things that you consider positive or negative if it's power-oriented, where there's a person who decides everything and you have to go to them for approvals? It could be quick decision-making. It could be having a singular vision. It could be a strong short-term gain. They might be a bottleneck for decisions. There might be a lack of innovation, or there might be low team morale. We're going to see if there's more pros than cons, but I'm assuming here, given the craft, there's probably a lot more cons. Yeah. While you vote, I'm going to grab the mic.
I love that low team morale is something, because that is a whole ROI in itself. Yeah, maybe you can't quantify it, but
I think
once people leave.
I like quantifying some of these negatives, though, because I think there's
Yeah.
something when you're at a performance-based culture, you can always talk about what you can and can't get done, but then they're not aware of what they're missing out on. If you're not achieving what you agreed to, they can see you miss 1 or 2 projects, but if you could be getting done twice as many projects, they don't know that. So at a power-based company, or like when you have a person who is dictating everything, I feel like you have to translate everything you want to do into their language. So either an OKR or some goal that they have. So essentially, you're kind of doing persona development on your stakeholder and then speaking their language whenever you're making a request or an ask of them.
Also, PMs kind of already have OKRs or have like ROIs that they're trying to achieve with their projects. What are they? It'd be cool if you knew too, so then you can tell in the future, once you've done your design, once you've done your project, your research, and you can say, oh, hey, guess what that impacted? Because now you're saying it's this. Like, that'd be really cool.
Yep. Okay, now let's talk about a bureaucratic culture. So where there's tons and tons of process, lots of admin, maybe more than just one person having power. There's tons of people who have to be involved in the process. What are the pros and cons? We have clear roles, consistent ways of working, clear accountability with hierarchy. There's also a resistance to change, possibly, also a lack of innovation, and possibly slower decision-making. This one's a bit more neutral. The resistance to change is obviously, I think, directly part of what makes something bureaucratic.
Because it's always been this way. Why not?
Rigid, yeah.
Let's keep it that way.
I love and hate that comment.
I do too.
We've always done it this way.
If I stayed always the same way, I would be a baby.
Sorry.
Clearly, it doesn't work out, guys. You would not want a baby up here.
Also, companies have to grow, and so why would the processes never change? Our competitors are changing. Why would we not change? Why is it so hard to agree to make a change, right?
How do you change that? Has anybody dealt with this? Like, has anybody dealt with a bureaucratic culture and running up against stuff?
When
Is
these
everybody
current companies
terrified
are-
to raise their hand because I might come to you? Yes, no? Now you're terrified or you will answer?
I can always give an example of this.
You still will answer for me, Lily? Dude, I feel like we need
I have to encourage more people
Yeah.
to speak. Who wants to go next?
You guys, it's not scary, I swear. You can stay down there. We won't even make you come up here. You can stay in the dark.
Casey can be less afraid. I'm going to talk about my previous job,
Perfect. Which company?
a bank in Ireland.
A bank. Cool.
I'm here
But
for
I
this.
think a lot of people find working for financial organizations, they're bureaucratic
Yes.
to a flaw. And part of it is important, of course. You don't want to crash a financial system or you don't want to break a financial rule. There's crazy consequences to stuff like that. But it really slows things down. And I find that as a researcher, it affects the quality of your research because you're going out to test something and I know it's probably not going to reach a customer for a few months, even if they've been asking for it for a while.
Or a year.
Or a year, or like a year and a half.
Or two.
But they can't, the customer almost can't see past that barrier of what they want to change now. And then you end up with quite negative or skewed research feedback when you're like, oh, I totally get it, but please can we talk about something else? Or please can we move slightly left of field? Because like, you don't know that your problem's going to be fixed in 3 months and I've moved past that 2 years ago and have to move on to something else or else you might never see this thing in future. And that resistance to change changes the perception that your customer base and then your interview base has to what you're doing, I find.
Yeah.
You have to sift through it.
That was an excellent answer. Thank you for taking me out of the spotlight for a second. I appreciate it.
Anyone
Anybody
else?
else want to be a kind soul?
There we
Yes,
go.
sir, in the red shirt. You're one of my new favorite people.
Richard.
Yeah, that's great because Genesys are one of my favorite companies. They have a big presence in Galway now because they have a shiny new research building, which is really cool.
Beautiful.
And I feel like they brought a lot to the tech scene in Galway because I didn't hear anyone talking about UX research in Galway before Genesys came along. And we have a lot of big companies, tech companies in Galway. We have the Boston Scientifics and the Medtronics, and we used to do some work for them, and they didn't know what UX was. So I think Genesys set a good trend in Galway, certainly in terms of UX design and UX research. And I suppose maybe like the banks, we work for a university, so we have a kind of a bureaucratic culture, which shouldn't really be the case because universities are supposed to be free and open thinking societies. But we learned a lot from working with the likes of Boston Scientific and Genesys in terms of having that more flexible approach to UX research. So I think there's a place for bureaucratic culture in certain industries, but when it comes to UX research, there should be no such thing as bureaucracy because you just won't find out the things you need to find out if you have to coordinate yourself to that kind of culture. But I just had a question about, for maybe it's something you can answer later, just about your successful UX work in Genesys. Like, what are the kind of tools that you can't live without as a team, or is there any tools that you could recommend for, especially we have small UX research team in our company?
I have a couple.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
either of you. So
Well, I just don't want to, if it's not the sponsors, oh, sorry, guys.
What team do you use? Which tools do you use?
This is a great question. So we use DocuSign, but there's also a lot of other tools that use DocuSign stuff as well and have built it in now. We also use Acuity Scheduling, but that's because I forced it on the team and I was like, this is very robust and I don't want to do this all manually, so I'm going to teach you how to do it and then you just put your times in there and then we'll do it that way. And they've learned and it's been smashing, but also there's other scheduling that is easier to do. We just started Dovetail. We're checking that out. It's in a pilot right now.
Using it-
Miro.
which part of Dovetail are you using? The library part, the transcriptions?
Yeah, I was going to say everything. The main reason we got that is because initially when I started, there wasn't really a knowledge base, and so I tried to spin up something in Confluence. And it turns out VPNs make people very angry when they have to sign into it.
Fair.
And if they get kicked off and then they have to sign into it again, they're like, how dare you?
Single
And they'll do
sign.
it for the PMs, but then when an ops person asks, nah. So, yeah, now we've got something that's not on a VPN.
Sorry if I derailed the
No.
the bureaucratic, but I just wanted to. Yeah, thanks very
No,
much.
not at all. I feel like with bureaucracy comes lots of tools, right?
And that's true too, because one of the things, even when you're doing tool procurement, there's bureaucracy, and there's a lot of teams you have, and there might not be as visibility like into what's going on, and then you might have something where you're like, I love this tool. This tool is amazing. We're going with this tool, and then they say, oh wait, our compliance, yeah, we can totally give you those documents.
Is it SOC 2? Is it in the budget? Maybe in January we can plan it for next year.
Yeah, and the prices, like they give you one price that you think you're going with, and then you get to the actual contract and you're like, hold up, there's all these little extra fees. We didn't talk about that. We talked about this and that. So there's those things too that you don't always know, and it can change. It can change what maybe is the best tool to maybe it wasn't the best tool because of price, because of some little details that are missed.
Now
Visibility.
let's talk about what we really care about, which is what we're here to do, right? Perform, we're generating value. So what is it like when everything is judged by the value you bring? Sometimes there's high innovation, there's high employee engagement, a lot more adaptable, but there might be so many choices to make. You might have decision paralysis, there might be a stress from a lack of clarity or high change, or a lack of clear, consistent vision.
Our little adaptability is just sitting there at a
Like,
zero.
everyone can do anything as long as it gets the job done, as long as we hit our goals. But maybe that isn't very unified effort. Maybe it's a little clumsy.
I am so glad I'm not on the stage. That would have been a cool nosedive.
I've caught you, don't worry.
But my shoes would have been on stage for a second, and you would have seen them in the air, and they would have looked beautiful. So, just letting you know.
All right, so but based on the votes, it seems like we're pretty split here, but mostly
Yeah.
cons, actually.
I like this.
So we're not liking any of these types of companies a lot, but there is a bit of a split between generative and the last one, bureaucratic. So a lack of clear vision and a stress for a lack of clarity. So you have lots of options. So maybe you're not being told exactly what to do, but they still want you to get the job done. But you need to involve them, right? Because they are your stakeholders, they're the ones who are assessing you, but they're giving you a blank slate. Does anybody have any questions about how to work in this environment? Here you go.
Thank you. It's just something that you said a second ago that's been on my mind a lot recently is like your...
Sorry, a little louder.
I think you phrased it like how you are measured on the value that you bring. But as a designer, like value is kind of a trigger term because our value isn't often like highly set out on what exactly that means. Like, are you talking about the company bottom line, or are we talking about like a UX metric that the company is like thinking about looking at? But yeah, I'm just interested. Have you any thoughts on, I suppose, what is the value that you mentioned, like that we measured on in a culture such as the generative culture?
Yeah, we can both answer this. Do you
I was
have
going to
OKRs?
say, has anybody ever dealt with this? Like, has anybody dealt with this in design where it's like you've solved it or you've had the same problem? We have no hands. No one's ever dealt with that? No one wants
You
to
have tons
answer?
of examples about this.
Yeah. Go, Kevin, if you want to.
The lack of clear vision, especially when it comes to, let's say, lots of lack of clarity. Sometimes the company will set very clear goals and then set them again, and then again, and then again. Or you have something that's like a big project and you deliver V1, and before V1 even gets shipped, there's 3 or 4 or 5 changes to it, or now there's a new company North Star metric, or the OKR for this quarter has changed, but the projects from last quarter are not done yet. And so I feel like the best model for this to solve this kind of problem is a working backwards model. So if you are working towards an open goal, which is what generally happens in these kind of environments, but the goal is short term, and everyone isn't aligned on the steps you need to take to get that goal done in the short term, that short-term goal becomes a long-term goal. But if we set a long-term goal to begin with, then every single thing we do this week, next week, this quarter, this year goes towards that 3-year vision. And so if I design, let's say, a roadmap that is 3-4 years long, I give you a full prototype of that roadmap 4 years in advance. Then engineering knows we need to rip apart this. Design knows we need to redesign these things. Everyone starts doing their parts. We know it's not going to get done this year, but at least we're all working towards not half measures, not Band-Aids, not temporary things, but long-term solutions that will hopefully add up eventually to that long-term goal. That's my idea.
And having that umbrella then gives you a good chance that even if you don't know what you should be measuring, I bet you could search what your long-term goal is and measurement and find some sort of suggestions there and then go, oh, wait, we can measure X, Y, Z. So we're only a year into it, but we've made it a ways. We're like 20% in or 10% in or something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff online that has just been fantastic and written by so many people too that helps that.
Does that help you?
Yeah.
Okay, so what does everyone think? Can a company change its culture? Do we believe this is true? Yes, but I haven't seen it. Yes, I have seen it, and it was great. No, I have seen it, and it was terrible. Or no, I have not seen it.
This is fun. I like having all of this live action
I
change.
love the movement.
Yeah. It's
That's
way
like-
better than like hands occasionally raising and then you think you're going to get called on and then
Big
you
mixed
slowly
group.
just curl into a ball.
Also, it's color, because like we're in the UX world, and we like to wear black, and so lots of cool, beautiful colors. I'm gonna wait for a couple more seconds to see what we got. I mean, most people say they believe it's possible, but they haven't seen it. And then we actually have more people saying now that they have seen it, and it was great. I only have one example of this, and it wasn't great. So I'm that little green sliver.
I really want to see. Like, there's 40% of you. I like how 3% were just like, no, she's going to talk about it.
Doesn't happen, right?
Has anybody in the crowd seen it and it was awesome? And why was it awesome? What happened to make it that way? Anyone? Anyone?
Anyone?
Yeah? Anybody else that we haven't talked to? Not that you're not lovely, because I swear there's other people that could raise their hand. Nothing? Nothing? What if I offered some dark chocolate Reese's for anyone who would eat it?
Can't virtually send it.
Lovingly
Okay,
handled.
let's see. What was it like?
Could mail it.
Yeah, it was really good. It was a games company, and it was a pretty low maturity company with some good games, and they started making some better games based on the success and got acquired. And basically all it was bringing in like really top tier specialists in really key roles and changing from, oh, we're just making fun games to, no, we're really focusing on players here and making the absolute best games we could make. And a lot of people had to move on. They just weren't suited for that kind of thing, and we just had to bring in the right people, and that was hard. But the success of the games and the future games the studio have made have been, I would say, worth that cost, even as hard as it was.
That's good. And so you said that it was specialist, so it was having like a clear direction and sort of being informed by their specialty? Like,
Yeah.
they had succeeded before, so you knew that this was a good way to go and not as much argument.
Yeah, pretty much bringing in monsters with like 30 years of top level experience.
You just got to get monsters. That's very easy.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, just bringing
Okay.
in people and just getting the right people, and it worked.
I'll also say like leadership changes, like even not at the highest levels, but even over your teams, over XYZ, whoever you are and however you lead things changes the culture, even at a small angle, because I can tell you from different managers when you've had them, you know who you've been like, this is my kind of management style and this is not working at all. And when I became a manager, there was a lot of stuff that I had said like, I never want to be this type of manager, or I don't want to take this with me. And then there were other things from managers that I was like, I love this. I want to be that type.
right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so having the right leader and having the right manager, and even at that smaller level, can really help change the entire vibe. So maybe it's not working at a smaller level, maybe it's not working at a higher level, but there's different levels of change too there.
Agreed. It could be just on your team, or it could be maybe from your boss or the department leader, maybe the entire company.
Yeah.
But on that note, that concludes our talk.
And he was worried about time. I was like, you're going to have to struggle to get me off here.
Can everyone give a big round of applause to Kasey?
Can we also applaud Kevin, who's just been working tirelessly?